so it's all speculative. But I'm quite convinced
It's okay.
that Baba dictated this probably April,
Thank
May,
you.
June, July, something like that, 1926.
You just
So during the first year of his silence. And it's a write-up record by the Mandalay of dictations he gave. That's an opinion. There's nothing in the manuscript that says that. But there are a lot of grounds for it. I mean, I've given talks about this as many. So as soon as this came up, I immediately felt that what this job really would entail for me, I mean, beyond the editorial work, was to really come to a deeper understanding of what MeherBaba's teachings were and how they related to the greater world of philosophy. Or, you know, English doesn't have a good word for this. It's not, what do you say, theology, theosophy, none of these words get it, but revealed truth.
Mysticism?
Yeah, but mysticism a lot of times is practice, not the expounding of the subject. Yeah, so I don't know, hikmah in Arabic, it's not even that. Darshana is a word used in India. Anyway, when I use philosophy, I don't mean it in the usual way. I mean MeherBaba's explanations for humanity about God and truth. Yeah, but when I say philosophy, I mean that we just don't have an adequate English word for what God speaks is.
Let's have 3 or 4 words.
Yeah, because, you know, Baba's not practicing philosophy. He's directly revealing and explaining truth itself, which he embodies, and in a form suited to this age. So it's something quite different. I mean, the Quran was that in its own time. The Gita was that. It belongs to that category of thing. But I started studying, you know, I've always been interested in this, but in a renewed effort, reading some of the great traditions, Vedanta and Sufism, Sofa Buddhism, Christian mysticism, and have done a lot of that over the last 20 years. I do it all the time. And I can really say that what MeherBaba has given is quite extraordinary, and there's nothing like it that I see anywhere. Baba always seemed almost to disparage his own philosophical works, to call them that. Say, oh, this is just a headache. And part of his reason, clearly, is to emphasize you can't find God through the intellect, you can't find God through thinking. You know, God has to be won through love, and that was always his emphasis. It would give you the impression, though, that God speaks in discourses and infinite intelligence are second rate. And that is not true at all. There's nothing like these books. God Speaks is really the first of its kind I've ever seen. The closest to that would be Vedanta, I would say, and Shankaracharya, or the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, these works are magnificent, no doubt about it. But nowhere do you find the kind of explanations that Baba has given. I haven't found it anywhere. And I've been looking all over the place.
Explanations of
God and creation.
God and creation.
Yeah. For example, this is actually the centerpiece of Baba's philosophy, is the divine theme. And what that was the name he gave to it. And that was the idea he put forward more than anything else. And what the divine theme is the story of the journey of the soul.
The circle.
And yeah, most of us are familiar with it because Baba actually, for infinite intelligence, it's there, although it's not featured. But when Baba went to Hollywood, the movie he wanted to make was on the divine theme. Okay. In the Discourses, when Baba gave a meditation there, you know, the 8 discourses in meditation, the 4th of them, it actually gives a meditation, a reading meditation, with instructions how to use it. You're supposed to read it every day, and there's a whole process that Baba outlines there. Well, what that meditation is on is the divine theme. Baba had a gathering here at Meherabad at the, you know where the Sai Darbar is? There's a plaque, those plaques is there in that space between the highway and the railway tracks. It's one of the old buildings. And on that platform, he had a gathering where he called 125 men from all around India. And the focus of it was a meditation, a group meditation on a chart. And the chart was on the divine theme. And then in 1955, God Speaks is an expanded development of the divine theme. That's its core. So that is actually the central idea Baba wanted humanity to get. And it's a completely new idea. If anybody, I keep it saying, if anybody is acquainted with someone having explained this before, please tell me, so I won't go around misinforming people. But what the divine theme is, you all are familiar with it. In the beginningless beginning, God had a whim to know himself. And out of that whim was precipitated the creation, the false universe. And innumerable drop souls came into seeming existence. First as stone, or actually through gaseous kingdoms, through stone, metal, plant, worm, fish, bird, animal, and human. One form after another in an interminable series of rebirth, transmigration, you could say. Each soul goes through this progression, which has as its aim the evolution of consciousness. This is a new part to the story which had not been given before. Actually, I'm not aware that even in Hinduism this story is told, that you go through a transmigratory sequence through which consciousness is evolved and through which a human form is achieved at the end. I don't see that in Hinduism at all. Hinduism is like, if I'm a bad guy, I get reborn as a cockroach. That still seems to be a wide-held belief.
What is that? The chart, was it Rano Gailey? Rano Gailey that she drew, so we have the picture.
Right, that one chart is probably the best emblem. It's in God Speaks.
So clear.
It wasn't in the first edition of God Speaks. It got put into the second edition.
Right.
But then human form is achieved through the evolution of consciousness. For God to answer the question, who am I? God has to be conscious, right? You can't answer that question if you're still asleep. You have to be awake. So the whole journey of evolution is to wake up, for God to wake up. That's its only purpose, which is achieved only in the human form.
Right.
Because the human form is the only form adequate to contain as a container of full consciousness. And once having achieved human form, there's no further evolution of form. It's the end of evolution. And then, but having won the human form, which is a great victory after millions, and Baba said you pass through 50 crore sleeps of death in the journey of the soul, and that's 500 million. So
to human consciousness?
No, that's total.
The entire 50 crore.
But most of that would be achieving.
I'm not able to keep up with everything.
Sure.
The whole journey of the evolution is to wake up. Once having achieved human form, there is no higher normally
form.
I'm thinking the way you're thinking, and so I can put it there but at that I don't know.
There's no further form.
No further form.
That's the end of the evolution of form. Form. Its evolution ends there. And
but you were talking about the Hindus saying that you can go back to a cockroach or
get reborn through lower
and so
form.
You're saying you don't think Baba says that's possible?
Baba clearly says that it's not possible.
Right.
Once having achieved the human form.
Oh, I thought he did.
Well, there's one exception, but basically, no. Once having achieved human form, God has the consciousness required to answer the question, who am I? But the great tragedy is that he doesn't do that because God has acquired all these sanskaras as a means of gathering consciousness in the first place. And so when you become a human being, instead of answering the question, who am I, you start living out your sanskaras. And this begins the long, endless cycle of reincarnation, which is the next phase. the journey of the soul, where you spend your sanskaras, but in the course of spending them, you take the enjoyment or suffering of them, you get a new batch, and you get reborn. And then you spend those sanskaras and get new ones and get reborn, and on it goes. Because the Jivatma in human form hasn't the slightest idea what the purpose of life is. Having just been a monkey, I have those thoughts are utterly remote to my consciousness. I'm not thinking about God. The idea of God never occurs to me. So you go through 8,400,000 lifetimes in human form, Baba said, 84 lakhs of rebirths, hundreds of millions of years. And this is the second long stage in the journey of the soul. The first is the evolution of consciousness, and the second is reincarnation, which is a vast, long exercise in futility, you might say, as you replay the same agendas over and over and over and over again. So if any of us ever have the experience that we're doing things over and over and over again, it is an old habit.
That is familiar, huh?
Millions of lifetimes are spent doing it until you start to get sick of it and start to say, what is the purpose of all of this? What am I doing here? Does God exist? And finally, when this question acquires sufficient urgency, where you simply can't stand anymore to continue through the cycling, ups and downs, the law of karma, you start to find your way into the spiritual path. And that inaugurates the last phase of the journey of the soul, which is involution consciousness. And there are, as you all know, 6 planes of the involution of consciousness, which culminate in the 7th, which is God realization. And in the course of that, first you pass through the subtle world. There's a gross, subtle, and mental sphere. All of this stuff has been explained by Baba so much more clearly than anybody else I have ever seen. Well, the great mystics and masters have always given hints of all of this. And the spiritual path is the part that you will find more completely described in the mysticisms of the world. Because that was kind of practical business for the sheikhs and their disciples, or for the gurus and their disciples. These were people who were actually dealing with the spiritual life and needed guidance. So we'll see in Rumi and Hafiz and Ibn Arabi and people like this some explanation. But even there, I don't find the clear, simple treatment of it in Baba, where there are actually 3 spheres, gross, subtle, mental, that there are 7 planes distributed through those spheres. It'll be kind of symbolic, or the maqams, there'll be 7 maqams they'll talk about, and there's a maqam of repentance and a maqam of this and that. But this is not to derogate any of that, but Baba really put it explicitly and clearly in a way that I haven't seen. Not in Vedanta either. The English language, English culture, had many strengths, but spirituality and spiritual understanding was not one of them.
The one of the
and actually, Francis Brazon in The Stay with God, I wish I could remember it, but he says about God speaks in English. It's almost like God got sick of Greek and Hebrew and Arabic and Sanskrit and decided instead that he would use the language of the most gross conscious human beings who ever lived on the face of the earth. We've forgotten about God most longest and most... He's very, very disparaging about it. But in a sense, English is a good language for that because it doesn't have a spiritual background. Arabic, Sanskrit, Persian do. You had great masters. But English is sort of like you have to put it afresh in a language that everybody can understand.
Yeah.
Because it is the world language now. In the past, you could have gleaned anything you needed to know if you could understand the esoteric language of a Hafiz, for example. But, and those who needed to have that knowledge got it from those places. But now the Avatar is giving it for everybody, laid it out in very, very simple terms. And this part of it, the involution of consciousness, you will find mysticism, the cloud of unknowing, St. John of the Cross in Christianity, St. Teresa, St. Francis, these people will tell you a lot about the path to God. Although, once again, I don't find it in anything like the clear, simple terms that Baba gives. But the whole story has never been told before that I can see. In Christianity and Islam, you couldn't tell that story, or Judaism, or Zoroastrianism, because those religions don't acknowledge reincarnation. And Baba's divine theme depends on that the same Jivatma, the same soul, progresses from one form to the next over millions of years. Well, that can't happen in an Islamic or Christian context where you get one shot. So those religions simply couldn't ever come to this. But even Hinduism and Buddhism, I don't see anything like the whim of God, the evolution of consciousness, the same treatment of sanskaras. There's actually an excellent Tiffin lecture that will be coming out this year where Baba talks about just this.
Explain that, please, Tiffin.
And these talks Baba gave in 26, 27, publishing a book of them. But in one of them, Baba compares his teachings to those that have been given before, actually.
Right.
And he says, no one else has ever explained these things as I've done. He said, the great masters, it's all kind of vague and impressionistic. And the masters had this knowledge, and they gave the essence of it to those disciples who they gave God realization to. But their explanations are all like syrup. They're all very much watered down. My explanations are something that has never been there before. He says this. And I'll say, having in my 20 years of really just trying to study as much as I can, the Arangton Public Library doesn't always have all the books I need to complete my course of study. In fact, I have yet to find the Arangton Public Library. But as best I can, I really haven't seen anything like Baba's explanations. I really haven't. This is one of the greatnesses of our master that we really don't appreciate. His teachings are unrivaled. They're magnificent. And that's because Baba himself de-emphasized it so much. But in point of fact, there's nothing like God Speaks. If anyone can show me wrong, please do so. I don't want to go on saying this if it's not true. I am the greatest admirer of the Bhagavad Gita, for example. It's splendid, magnificent work. But it doesn't give anything like this kind of a picture of the journey of the soul. There's nothing of the journey of the soul in it. I don't see it in Shankara. And of course, the Quran can't talk about anything like this since you have just one lifetime in the story that Islam gives. So Baba's explanations really are something extraordinary. And God Speaks is the master exposition of it. Sometimes people will say that everything is in God Speaks, and sometimes they'll say infinite intelligence, for example, was the first draft of God Speaks. I don't think that's true. I think that's definitely not true. And there's a lot that isn't in God Speaks that you can find elsewhere in Baba's own explanations. So God Speaks is not the comprehensive encyclopedia of Baba's philosophy, but it is the master framework of it, and it's the fullest developed statement of it. And there really is, as far as I can see, nothing like it in the literature of the world. Sometimes among Baba's lovers, people will even put down God Speaks a bit in a certain way. And I understand why, and it's well motivated. They'd say, it's just intellectual, just love Baba. Okay. And Baba did say that. So, I'm not, the essential truth in that I would want to affirm. But there's no need to disparage God Speaks or Baba's books to make that point. And it doesn't really do them justice either. yes, it's true. God speaks and infinite intelligence and these other things do tax the intellect. That is so. But it is not just sterile intellectualism. That really is a false picture of it. It does not do justice to it at all. It's full of light. Because as a kid, my only contact with spirituality before I heard of Baba was just about the only one was through Tolkien, who I fell in love with at about age 8. And, Tolkien has always these images. You go into these dark, deep caverns, and they're glittering gems and rooms with gold and this imagery he gives all over the place, which populated my imagination. Baba's books to me are like that. They're beautiful. The vision they give is beautiful. Now, it's not for everybody necessarily. Not everybody is interested in these topics. But please don't say it's just sterile intellectualism. I know so well from academia what sterile intellectualism is. And this is not that. They're lustrous, visionary. Vistas are revealed in his books. Now, you sort of have to learn how to study them and how to unpack them and how to open them before that becomes fully visible. That's true. And maybe for a lot of people, this isn't their cup of tea, so to speak. And that's fine. But for those who want to explore this way, there are unspeakable treasures there. You have to work at it. You have to open it up. You have to learn how to read the codes, you might say.